This is a Scipio Aemilianus commander review. With the release of information on William Wallace, there was bound to be a second commander, and just like that, we have the second commander to be released, Scipio Aemilianus. In today's video, we're going to cover the preliminary release information, including skills, talents, formations that are going to work well with him, pairs that work well with him, and where he'll fit in the stacked infantry meta. As with William Wallace, please note that these are subject to possibly change, so keep that in mind if you're watching this much later on. Without further ado, let's get started. First, let's cover the skills. The primary skill is a 2700 damage factor skill that increases the damage the target takes by 20%. This is massive, especially in a rally capacity, as 20% damage is great 1v1. When you're swarming the objective, for example, it'll make your allied swarm be much stronger. This is also super useful in the field because 20% damage vulnerability is huge. This also lines up super well with the rest of his kit, especially his expertise, which we'll get into shortly. The second skill is a 20% march boost off of Alliance territory that gives 30% health if you're leading a rally. This also means that you won't get any benefit in the field outside of the march speed from this skill, but the health boost is huge for rallies as well, both 1v1 and against rally swarming. His third skill is a 5% normal damage boost, which when attacked by a basic attack, can remove all health and defense debuffs on this commander, gain immunity from those debuffs for 3 seconds, and 25% less normal damage taken. With swarming as prevalent as it is, and the short cooldown of 5 seconds, this is clearly aimed to counter debuffers and counter rallies, and particularly so with as many debuffers as there are for defense and health in the game. Think about Hermann Prime's third skill, or Scipio Prime's active skill. This is also against the defense break of Nevsky and Justinian's counter rallies, which makes a huge counter to that pair in general. This will also counter Dido's ambushed effect, which is an interesting interaction because most people are going to be defaulting to archer defenses to counter the infantry rally. The fourth skill is a rally skill, where launching basic attacks has a 50% chance to drop attack and defense on the enemy, and silence them if Scipio Aemilianus is the primary. This is excellent and can be triggered once every 5 seconds for 2 seconds of uptime, giving a 40% uptime of a silence, which is great. Lastly, the expertise makes you gain rage 40% faster when your current target uses a skill, which is great at countering rage-generating garrisons like Jan, and helps mitigate some of the downsides of swarming of the extra skill uses that garrisons get when they are swarmed. This is mostly going to affect the skill tree and support tree garrisons, like I mentioned Jan, and Zenobia is another example, but it will have a great impact against every garrison, as every garrison ultimately has the garrison tree that has a large amount of natural rage generation when used inside the garrison, which this rally is able to steal out from under the garrison essentially. Overall, this looks like an extremely loaded kit, which has some dangerous rage generation without really needing the support or skill trees to do so, and a potentially deadly double rally option with the damage vulnerability, as you'll be able to attack passes much more effectively. Next, we're on to the talents. As with William Wallace, we don't know all of the information on the Smite talent tree, but we know enough about the other two trees to know that you'll likely want to be going for the keystone talent in the blue tree. Outside of that, we have the infantry tree, which you really should at least build to hold the line because the 20% damage reduction is huge, especially with basic attacks being a huge part of his kit, allowing you to lean into it more and be even stronger. The conquering tree is okay, but generally speaking, the infantry tree and the blue tree keystone are the main priority. If you are looking for an alternative build, you can look into going into the conquering tree a bit, but a lot of the talents, similarly to garrisons, have impacts to city rallies more than rallies on strongholds specifically in general. Meaning those points are not 100% effective like they can be on the blue or red trees, which are more geared towards the main troop type of and the damage type of the commanders. So you have infantry and smite damage, which are both things that he needs as an infantry commander that deal smite damage. So ultimately, those should be your focus and talents, with hold the line and likely the full smite damage tree, with maybe some additional talents off the main path, depending on how many points you have. Now we are on to formations and armaments. In the skills and talents, we spoke at length about how well situated Scipio's kit is, and formations have a lot to offer him as well. Arch formation is going to be his go-to formation, as it works great with his Smite damage kit and provides some great damage boosts as well as survivability. On top of there being no real other good fit in his kit in the formations section without a shield or a heal on a secondary commander. For specialty inscriptions on Arch, you have a 3.5% boost to normal damage with a 70% boost on the next attack at the cost of 100 rage. This is particularly great since you get that extra 40% rage gain boost on his expertise that will likely give you tons of extra rage without throwing you off schedule for your skill uses. The next one is another 3.5% damage boost that has a 10% chance to boost normal damage but reduce skill damage, which is basically free boost of damage if you pair him with another Smite damage commander, as you don't need skill damage. This can also be a 3-second uptime on a 5-second skill, making for 60% effectiveness when swarmed, with basic attacks hitting all swarmers, and also boosting swarm resist in that way. Third, we have a 5% skill damage resistance, which is good against pretty much every garrison except for Gorgo, and up to 12% more normal damage based on your lost troops. This is probably the weakest specialty inscription, but it's still incredibly solid in many ways. Last, but certainly not least, the final inscription gives you a flat 8% boost to normal damage dealt, which is pretty solid. This means overall you get 15% normal damage with all the specialty inscriptions, the normal damage attack boost on the next attack passive on this first one, and a small amount of skill damage resistance, and it's surprisingly strong and is definitely not something to take lightly. Tack on that nice little boost of normal damage on a normal attack trigger, and it's going to be something that is great for resisting swarm and great 1v1. That being said, anything that increases all damage and normal damage is excellent when it comes to other inscriptions, and particularly anything that can boost damage reductions as well. For base stats, if you can't get damage or damage reductions, health should be prioritized over defense, which should be prioritized over attack, and your armament stats to maximize your traits. Now we are on to pairings, with Scipio being a Smite damage commander, with the Smite damage tree, and having the requirements to be primary for some of his skills to be maximized. You want him to be both primary and with another Smite damage commander. Because of this, you have pretty much two main options in the current state. William Wallace and Liu Che. Both have good potential, but of the two, I feel like William Wallace is the better option. William Wallace has a huge damage primary, with a chance to boost Smite damage above 1000 factor by 40%. This would include Scipio Aemilianus' massive skill, and add in the 20% damage taken vulnerability on Aemilianus' primary, and you have huge damage potential, with good normal damage resistance from William Wallace as well. In addition, you have a nice boost to normal Smite damage on his 4th skill, and an expertise that grants a shield, and you get some nice bonuses that could be potentially deadly. And it may explain why William Wallace had somewhat of an underwhelming initial stat on his kit on his own. While not a perfect puzzle piece fit, it's about as close as you can get at a glance. This will, of course, require testing, and Liu Che does present an interesting option with having an AoE and having more abilities that can hit swarmers. He may also be a viable option against more swarm-happy enemies than William Wallace is. But the clear frontrunner is William Wallace at this stage, given the current state of what we are seeing in these initial releases. Lastly, as we begin to close out our discussion on Scipio Aemilianus, I wanted to touch base on where he fits in the meta. And it is, pretty clear that he'll be quite viable in the rally meta. He has a kit that's great in normal damage, hits enemies hard, and is a good troop type to naturally resist swarm, and you add on some good swarm resist in his kit as well. And with his new talent tree, he has the potential to be absolutely insane in the rally meta for quite some time to come. With William Wallace as well, he is very well may be shattering the meta pretty quickly on release. For the field, however, it is a little more in the air. Two of his skills require being in a rally or attacking a city or stronghold. The 30% health and the 4th skill would be completely off the table as well. However, that debuff on the primary skill would still be huge for allies as a support, and it shows how big Belisarius Prime is with his 15% damage vulnerability. Imagine dialing that up to 20%. So he may have a niche there, and William Wallace as well. In the field, he also wouldn't need to be primary, as the silence on his rally skill that requires him to be primary is specific to rallies, and you may be able to even run him at 5-5-5-1. but the expertise would also be excellent for hitting more targets with his debuff as well, because you get more rage faster, which gives you more skills. While he might not be a top tier field, he will definitely be a good supporting march and might do well in the field with either William Wallace or with Scipio Prime to double stack debuffs, where you'll have a weaker trade overall in that pair, but it'll augment the other pairs with the 30% health debuff and the 20% damage vulnerability. But in that case, you will lose out on mixed damage sources, but it may be worthwhile just because of the extra debuffs you get to stack on the enemy, and it will definitely warrant some early testing on release. But with that, we will wrap up our discussion on Scipio Aemilianus. This new Scipio has huge potential in the rally, as well as maybe busting into the field meta, so I'll be eager to see what officially releases, as well as if they make any adjustments. As if he's released with his current kit, he will be a major player in the field meta as well, but definitely in the rally meta. But let me know what you think. Is he going to be a meta powerhouse? Are you planning on building him outright or just waiting on the results? Let me know in the comments. If you want to see a specific video topic covered or another commander review covered, the comments are a great place to suggest those as well, as they do become future video topics. You can also join the Discord using the link in the description and join the conversation and vote on future video topics there as well. But as always, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield.